Welcome back to Table Talk and Tumbleweeds. We are here in our 6th week of Lent. I think the one week before Holy Week, and we are looking at the Siege of Gondor, sort of anticipating what comes next, and really thinking about despair and hope. But we wanted to touch on the Palantiri. And the Palantiri is the seeing stones. We could go into the lore, but there are plenty of videos that are about where that.
They'll do a better job than we will.
If you haven't done Deep Geek yet, it's
you're finally going to shout them out.
I'm finally going to shout them out. Deep Geek, they have a lot of really good videos that cover a lot of the background and stuff. But the Palantiri, we are encountering 2 of them. Well, 3 of them because there's one in Mordor. One is the one that we saw when Isengard fell, and it's the one that Pippin accidentally picks up
after Wormtongue throws it out of the.
Wormtongue throws it out, and of course Sauron. It's a good thing Wormtongue got out of there with just his life, because after Sauron threw out the family jewel, and so he has that one that Sauron was using, which turned him, right, because when you're using these stones, if someone's on the other end, you're competing. There's a mental there's a clash of wills that's going on through the stones, at least through these particular ones. Yeah. So the one that we're talking about mostly today, although
this one will come back because Aragorn gets it.
Aragorn gets it. So we'll
put that on a shelf
for now. We'll get back to it before the end of the video, I hope. But the one we're talking about today is the one that's up in the tower in Gondor. And Denethor has been going up there for years by himself. It's been there for 1,000 years, but they know it's connected to Mordor. And the stewards of Gondor had stopped using it because they were worried about what it would...
That agonistic thing where they fight over...
Yeah.
Are we enough to counter Sauron?
Yeah.
Are we enough to have this...
Yeah, so there was a doubt with that. And Denethor at some point decided that the need was enough, that he needed to do it. And he believed it in his strength and his ability. And, to be fair to Denethor, and I'm going to do a brief defense of Denethor here, because I think he should sue Peter Jackson for the way he was portrayed in the movies, because Denethor is not a doddering old fool. No. In the books, he's a smart guy.
Yes.
He knows stuff, and he's been getting a lot of good intel from
truthful
the same
information.
Because Sauron is not can't look in more directions at once, and so a lot of times someone can be looking through the stone, and if Sauron's not there, you can
you can control it.
So he's been able to get some intel. He's a smart guy. He's an excellent strategician.
Yes.
Every time Gandalf tells him something in the book, he's like, "I've already thought of that." So he is. So he's not a dumb guy, and he's not weak.
No.
He's not doddering. He's not corrupt. And I think this is something that. He used the stone a heck of a lot longer than Saruman, right?
This is true.
And Saruman is the head of the Order of Wizards, right? And he lasted, 20 minutes?
Well, and I wonder again, and this is one of those things, is it because Saruman is grasping for power, and so he's more easily corrupted? And because he's higher up, it's easier to corrupt him, and the lower down is harder to corrupt. And that's a constant theme in these, right? That's why the hobbits are the only ones who can take the ring.
Right.
Because they are humble enough to say, okay, we'll see what happens. As opposed to, I'm great, I'll do it all. And so Denethor does not have the same, certainly he suffers from similar stuff as Saruman, but certainly not to the extent Saruman does. That Saruman is easily corruptible because he believes he's not corruptible.
And he wants power. Yes. And I think it is true that Denethor has the arrogance. Denethor has the arrogance of the smart guy.
Yes.
Right? And Denethor is used to being the smartest guy in the room.
Oh, yes.
And because of that, there's a certain, and there's a certain arrogance that comes from being smart, because you see things that other people don't see, exactly. Right? And you're kind of used to being able to think a few steps ahead of people, right? And so he's like, and so far it's been working.
It has.
It's been working. He's been getting the information. But the problem is that he's isolated, and it is that arrogance. And I think there's 2 things that happen there's several things that happen. One, he becomes really isolated. Yes. He comes to the edge of despair, and he feels isolated. And we talked about this a little while ago. He does not believe that Rohan is coming. He thinks it's just, so he's desperate.
He believes everything's isolated, not just himself, but his Gondor is isolated, Minas Tirith is isolated.
Yes.
Everything has been so completely siloed off that
right.
He cannot trust anyone else. He has fallen away from any possibility of fellowship.
Right.
Because he doesn't trust anybody else.
So he's got the secret. He's going up there, and perhaps he's right to not trust other people with it, but he's also not trusting other people with the information. So he's isolated himself. He's isolated by grief because of Boromir, and then further isolated by grief of Faramir, who he doesn't he thinks Faramir is weak.
Yes.
He loves Faramir, but he thinks he's weak. He thinks that Faramir is not the leader that Gondor needs right now. Gondor needs a Boromir who's going to go out and, kick ass and take names.
And steal rings.
And steal rings. Right, and he even says that. In the book, he says that, Boromir would have brought it. Boromir would have brought the ring. Because he's found out that Faramir has let the ring go.
Saw the ring and let it go.
Let it go. I can't believe that you did that. Boromir would have brought it, and Gandalf said, what would you do? Would you use it? No, but we could have hidden it away. Right?
And again, it's that I'm the smartest person in the room.
Yes,
you guys at that council didn't think about hiding it. They did.
They did. But there's no place to hide it because he will find it eventually. His power is going. All that sort of stuff. And Gandalf says to him, and I think I have the quotes in my piles here somewhere, but Gandalf says to him, Boromir wasn't going to bring it back. And if he did, it would not have been the Boromir that you knew. The ring would have taken him. And we know that it would have because it already took him, right? He wasn't even carrying that thing.
And it still
managed to take him. So he has the arrogance of power. He has the arrogance of intellect.
Yes.
But he also, and again, not unjustifiably, but the problem is that he's also isolated. He's isolated by the secret.
Yes.
And he's isolated by his grief.
And being all alone makes him do some very foolish things for somebody who is supposed to be wise.
What I can't help but thinking when I listen to this is, and I can't remember the name of the book or the article, I think it had to do with the Pentagon Papers, but that basically these generals that got us into the Vietnam War, they were used to being, they're the brightest and best. Yep. That was what it was. The Brightest and Best was the name of the book, because these were the smartest guys in the country. They went to Harvard, probably just Harvard, right? And they were running things, and they made such bad decisions because they had the arrogance of power, and they also had the arrogance of intellect. They thought that they could tell better than the people that were around them.
And there was never that briefest moment of, what if we're wrong?
What if we're wrong? And that was the isolation. And this is what Denethor has in this. He's isolated. He has no fellowship to say this is a really bad idea. Gandalf tries to tell him, but he doesn't respect Gandalf, who also, he suspects Gandalf is just as arrogant as he is in his mind. And there might be some justification to that, especially with the old Gandalf.
There's some personality conflicts going on.
So you have a combination, really, of a lack of different perspectives, a lack of fellowship, and also a lack of humility. Right? That he believes that he can control events.
And all this eventually wraps its way around to the fact that the one thing that he doesn't do with all this knowledge, intellect, information, power, is he does not discern.
He doesn't discern.
He does not discern what is the right path forward, and he can't do it because he's alone.
Right, because discernment is, by its very nature, something that happens in community.
It only can happen in community.
Yes, especially in a congregational polity, right? It's like there has to be discernment, right? Because I can't just tell people what to do because sometimes my ideas are really bad. I know you find that hard to believe.
I do find that hard to believe.
Well, there was this time, So I mean, I sometimes get into the same pattern as Denethor, right? Because I think I have a really good idea.
It's a real easy trap to fall into.
And it's why I'm really bad at chess.
Okay.
Because I get so wrapped up in the beauty of my plan that I forget that there's someone on the other side who's making their plans. And I'm always shocked.
You're always baffled. How did that happen? That was the plan.
How did that happen? You had to follow along. Follow along.
You're supposed to be doing what I want you to.
Right, because you get so into your head. And this is what happens to Denethor. He's so into his head. And by himself, and he has no community to say, this is a bad idea.
Have you thought twice about this?
So,
and he has not.
Perspective and humility. And I think there's a contrast you can make here. Well, we've already talked about that. I mean, part of the despair is that he's only seeing what Sauron wants to show him. And this becomes very clear at the end. Sauron is onto it. He's starting to fall under Sauron's traps eventually. So he chooses only to show him the might of Mordor, chooses only to show him the black ships coming up, right? He doesn't know that Aragorn is on the ship, right? So he's really giving him selective information.
And all of that information is to isolate him and make him despair.
Right. And if you just check with Gandalf, right? If you'd shared information with Gandalf.
With anybody.
Yeah, with anybody. Well, so he's in this little doom spiral of despair. Texting, getting all of this bad information that's got him upset, and so he decides doom scrolling. He decides it's a really good idea to kill himself and Faramir. So he's gonna burn.
Faramir at this point has been injured to the point where he may not survive.
Yeah, he's been stung by one of the death things.
and so there's this. Okay, well, I may as well take him with me because why would I not? And that's the depth of the despair that he's gotten into because of his isolation, because of the decision, the arrogance to say, well, no one else is going to figure out a plan, so.
Yes. I can't believe that Sauron actually also has moves.
Yeah.
So this is, and just to briefly contrast with Aragorn, who also uses one of the stones, but he uses it only to show himself.
So the one from Orthanc, he takes it, and he, again, connects with Sauron.
Yes. He has the crown, or not the crown, but a crown. And the sword. Reforged sword, which was brought to him by the Grey Company when they come. So now, and he also knows that Sauron has also seen the Hobbit.
Yes.
So again, Sauron can't believe that he would have the ring and not use it. So
if he's showing him the sword reforged, the crown on his head, saying, "Look, we're ready for you," he must have the ring.
He must have the ring. And so this is when Sauron decides, I got to move. I got to do it now. I got to go quickly.
The searchlight switches from Mordor to the Pelennor Fields.
And so that helps Frodo and Sam, but it also makes Sauron move more quickly than he had wanted to.
Yes, before he was prepared, and that sort of stumble even on Sauron's part is a big deal.
Is a big deal.
Because if he'd kept his plan, kept his goals in mind, it would have been a much different story.
Might have been.
Might have been a different story.
So this is so you have these contrasts, right? You have a truth without perspective versus communal discernment, knowledge without humility, this belief that he can do it alone. But I think the biggest difference is that basically Denethor has lost hope.
Yes.
And Aragorn still has hope.
And Aragorn is trying to forge hope. In the actual text, and I'd have to look up where it says it, but once he goes and reports back to everybody, this is what I've done with the Palantiri, they all said, "What on earth did you do that?" And his answer was, "I'm trying to give us a bit of hope that he will not be watching in Mordor, where Frodo and Sam are. If we can distract him, that's our job."
That's our job. Our whole job is distracting. And that's something we're going to pick up on next week.
But he's forging that hope. He not only has somebody saying, "Therefore we do have hope if we do this together."
Yes, and fellowship. And so that's, and really I think this is the overarching theme that we've had as we've talked about hope this time, is that, hope is really about fellowship. And again, we talked about it in the first video, is hope is part of a communal choice. It's something that we do together. It's something we encourage in one another. These very Pauline texts, which, maybe we'll put them down there if people want to look at the text. But ultimately, Sauron is defeated because of this expanded fellowship, right? These people that refuse to give up hope in each other, right? Denethor loses because he loses hope because he doesn't have his community. And we've kind of touched on all of these as we build up to the Pelennor Fields, right? You have the Ents, the Woes, people who aren't even part of the fellowship, But also you have an extended fellowship that goes back 1,000 years to that guy in the north that forged that sword that sat in the barrow until
Pippin found it.
Until Pippin found it. Merry and Pippin, and back when they set off from the Shire, when they get these weapons, when they're given them from Tom Bombadil, after the Barrow Wights attack them, and the Barrow Wights were only awake. See, deep geek. Yeah. The Barrow Wights were only awake because when the Witch King had come through, he was like, might as well wake him up. Can't hurt.
Except
it did. So you have this intricate fellowship, people that you don't even know, people that you don't even,
that you'll never see in person because they were dead.
Because they were dead 1,000 years ago and had no idea that you would be. And he was forging that blade with the hope that someday someone might pick it up and use it to kill the Witch King.
And he did.
And so this is, and I think this is this communal hope. And, of course, thinking about it in the context of the church, that we talk about the church, universal and
throughout the ages,
right? That people who hoped 1,000 years ago and people who will be hoping 1,000 years from now, we are all part of the same fellowship.
We are all still that united in fellowship despite our distance, whether it's in time, in space, place, or even in all these other things we've talked about. The identities that we have share.
Yeah.
We're separated in language and race and all these other things, and yet we are still held in one fellowship because that's who we are.
Because Jesus Christ is the head of the church, right? And that is perhaps a fellowship moment that we will end on for this week, and then next week we will have. I think we're going to be touching on the actual entry into Mordor with the ring, and Frodo will be back.
Thank you.